This podcast contains factual information only. It is intended for professional financial advisors and does not contain any personal financial advice. You should not make any investment, insurance, or financial decisions based on the content of this podcast.
Hey team, Ben Nash here. I'm one of the co-founders at XY Advisor and founder of the rapidly growing Pivot Wealth, which is my business baby I started from scratch about 8 years ago, and I've since scaled up to become one of Australia's better known financial advice companies for high income accumulators. You can join me every Tuesday as I have the pleasure of furthering my own knowledge by interviewing some of the best people in our industry and beyond to improve every part of what we do with our advice process. We're currently hiring financial advisors and associates, so if our approach resonates, you can learn more at pivotwealth.com.au/careers.
Plutosoft is a comprehensive financial planning software and CRM program. It covers every part of the advice process: fact-finding, strategy modelling, portfolio management, life insurance, SOA, and report generation. Plus, it includes workflow management and a client hub portal. Plutosoft helps financial planning firms produce high-quality advice in a fraction of the time and has an extensive range of platform data feeds. As the industry's complete all-in-one solution, Plutosoft has helped rocket fuel the success of leading financial planning firms around Australia.
Hey guys, Ben Nash from the XY Advisor team, and today I'm pumped to be here with Troy MacMillan. Troy's joining us from the lovely West Coast. He's the chief executive, founder, and still a practicing advisor at the Wealth Designers. He started that business from scratch back in 2009 with a dream and a prayer and an assistant, and the rest is history. Troy, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks, Ben. Good to be here, mate. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, mate, it's great to chat. You guys have been at it for a while, and I was just chatting to you when we were talking before firing up the camera here that when I kicked off my business 6.5 years ago or so, that your company was one of the ones that I looked at in terms of what businesses were doing, things that were aligned with, where we wanted to be playing. So, it's great to be chatting. I'm keen to talk a bit about, the story and the journey. Obviously, you've been at it for a bit over a decade. What's changed, what hasn't changed, and pick your brain so I can selfishly, get a few tips for myself, mate. So maybe that's a good place to start. Maybe talk us through the evolution of the business and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Look, it has been a long evolution. I mean, it goes back 20 odd years ago now. I was working overseas. I was working in investments, initially trained as an accountant. And I came back to Australia and I wanted to stay in Perth because I had some family members who went well and didn't want to go over to the East Coast. So I thought, what am I going to do that's not investment related, that's in Perth? And then found financial advice. And back then, 20 years ago, I mean, there wasn't a lot of options. So I worked in the bank initially and spent 2 years in the bank, 1 year understanding what financial advice was all about, and the second year sort of planning my exit. So creating a business plan, how I thought I could deliver it differently, because to be really honest, I mean, it's no secret to anyone. I mean, the way advice was delivered back then was just really surprising to me. Coming back from overseas, the way it was sold and the commissions and all that part. So I thought, mate, there had to be a better way. So the planning process took that year, and I started the business back in end of 2002, 2003 with another partner. But even those early days, I didn't feel like we really captured a different process. I felt like we were still doing pretty much what we're doing in the bank, but just probably a little bit more enthusiasm. It wasn't until I didn't give up. I kept sort of looking, there must be a better approach. I just couldn't find it, but I did find it overseas, and I found it with Bill Baccarat, which I guess many people would know now. But back then in 2002, 2003, Bill was quite unknown to Australia, and I had some initial chats with him over there. He invited me over to San Diego, and I spent a couple of trips flying over to San Diego with a lot of vigor around how I could actually understand a different approach to advice. And that's what sort of got me, I guess that changed my mindset. And I knew there was a different approach. And it wasn't too long after that Bill started coming to Australia, and they sort of teamed up with Jim Stackpool, who a lot of people would know as well. And I guess I was really fortunate to have formed a really great relationship with Jim back in those early days, 2005. And I think I engaged him professionally in 2006 to help with our engagement process. And to be really honest, our engagement process has not changed since 2006, where we price on value. We have 12 monthly engagements with our clients. And then in 2009, when I started the Wealth Designers, that was the line in the sand moment where everything we're going to do from that point in time was going to be different. So essentially the business approach and the advice process hasn't changed at all, Ben, since that time.
That's amazing. And I know that you're no commission, no asset-based fees, no product fees, which I think that's the way that we do things as well. So obviously in my totally biased opinion, it's it's the way that we find it's best for us. I know that there's a lot of different ways to be right with that sort of stuff, but I think it's fair to say that it's increasingly common today. But 13 years ago, probably would have been one of the few. I'm still saying that we're like one of the 1% of companies that don't take commissions, whereas you would have been in the 0.1%, I'd imagine, back then. How did you go about, I suppose, getting to that point and then coming up with that value-based model at a time where it really was pretty uncommon?
Yeah, there were some nervous moments, I can tell you, like starting a business again from scratch with a completely different advice model than what was being used before. I look back now and I think, that was maybe I was younger and braver, but it was a big leap. But it was one we've never ever looked back from the moment we made it. And it didn't take too long from having new client engagements where we could understand that it was just working. It made a lot of sense, not just to me, but it made sense to the clients. It made sense to our referral partners, and our referral partners have always been our lifeline. We've done very well with engaging professional relationships, so it was working on all levels. But with the client engagement, and it was, everyone's obviously seen Simon Sinek and read the book, and the whole thing positioning around why, and that was really powerful at the time. So we did focus a lot on why the client was engaging us. And to be probably honest, like before that time, when I sat down with clients, a lot of it was based on what I could do for the client. Like I came from an accounting background, an investment banking background. So I thought then that all this skill that I had was of real value to the client. And of course it was, but it wasn't really why the clients were engaging myself or my firm at that time. So by flipping it around and going back to the client around why they were engaging, what was most important to them, having much deeper conversations with the clients back then, which we still do today, crafting out our skill set on how to have those deep conversations. Because we all know clients don't come in ready and armed to have these deep conversations. You have to really guide them through it. And that's something the Wealth Designers now is very good at. And all the advisors, we spend a lot of time making sure that skill is always improving. But have those deep conversations to get their why, to understand what's most important, the outcomes that they want to achieve. And then once we knew that, then we could work out what advice we could deliver that was going to help them achieve those outcomes, and what services were going to be most valuable to the clients for that 12-month period. So we could price it pretty easily. So it was priced on value, but also priced on financial complexity as well. And we deliver that in the engagement model. And to be honest, it's never really, we don't have too many problems engaging clients that way. We never have, which is why we've continued on with it for such a long time.
Absolutely. And I'm keen to selfishly pick your brain on that, because I was just saying that we've just switched these 12-month fixed term agreements, which we did in the 1st of July last year. So we're just coming up for our renewals, and I'm keen for some tips. But before we talk about that, I'm keen to talk a little bit more about the values-based financial planning, or the actual practical process from the Bill Bacharach stuff. And you say get to the why. And I read that book. I read it, I didn't even know when, it was almost a decade ago, possibly. And I think it makes a lot of sense. But you've been doing it for more than a decade in business, and it's one of the things that hasn't changed. So I'm keen to hear from someone that's been at it for such a long time. How you mentioned that the people come in and they're probably not, or when people approach you, that they're not maybe ready to have those deeper conversations. how do you get them there? Like, what are the actual steps that you go through
Yep.
in your new, call it a prospect process or engagement
Yes.
process or whatever, to get them to the point where they do start unpacking some of their, their deeper feelings and drivers to help you help them?
So what I found, I mean, having those conversations came pretty easy to me. It's just my natural personality. So I found it okay. But as I started bringing on really great advisors to the business, it was one part. Of course, everyone learns technical skills. Very few have got the soft skills to feel comfortable in asking clients sort of those deeper, more meaningful type questions. So I was trying to build a framework from what Bill would give me, from what Jim was working in the office. But you know what worked the best? And what worked the best was just giving the client more heads up around what to expect in that first meeting. It sounds simple, but something we never did in those early days. So today our process is when clients first come to us, they have a 15-minute consult call, and in that 15 minutes, it's a bit of a fact-finding mission between the advisor and the clients. But at the very end, we tell them exactly what to expect in that first meeting. So they do get the heads up. So they know the first part of the meeting is going to be all about them, and they're going to have time individually and then collectively to tell us what's most important to them, what are the outcomes that they really want to achieve, and what the purpose is of them achieving it, and how they'll be feeling around the attainment of those outcomes. So they sort of know there's going to go a little bit deeper at the start, and we sort of make it lighthearted. We have a bit of a laugh about it. So clients understand, they know exactly what the first part of the meeting is going to be. And they know the second part is going to be more financially driven. Then we're going to go through the information they've already given us. We get everything up front. So because we know in that first meeting, majority of time we want to spend is having these deeper conversations and getting the answer, because we know, Ben, that the answers they give us is really the reason why they're going to be paying advice fees every year. And unless we get those answers from them, it's going to be quite surface. And not a lot of substantiation around the fees and the value attached to the fees. So I would recommend anyone, if you're going to go down that model, it's really that softly positioning it with the clients before they come to the office, so they don't get that. They look at you like, oh, am I in a psych meeting or something? I wasn't expecting these questions, because that's what we used to hear. And for a lot of the advisors back then, they used to freeze and they go, oh, and they go straight to the financial part. But look, nowadays our advisors become really good at it. They know to put the pen down, let the client speak. It's all about the client speaking. We're just there to help guide them through the questions. And do you know what? Some of the meetings we have with clients are incredibly liberating. You get people occasionally, there's tears. One of our advisors, Cara, always keeps a box of tissues to the side. Because the clients are having conversations generally they don't have between themselves if it's a couple. They don't often talk about things like this. So there's a lot of aha moments we find. And you know what? After a good discovery meeting, you come out and you pretty much know that you're going to form a good working relationship with those clients.
Yeah, great. I did try it actually for a few meetings, but I found that, and it's probably was my delivery more than the actual clients, but I found that they really had never been asked those questions before and weren't. I don't know. Never really thought about it. I even struggled with what does a great result look like when it comes to your money? And people are like, oh, I haven't thought about it. And I sort of think, well, great, but what were you thinking when you walk into the financial planner's office to have a conversation with them?
They just haven't thought it. Yeah,
they
haven't thought about it, and that's why. Look, the more we become better at guiding them through it, and look, we do a lot of practice in it as a group too. We quite often practice these sorts of meetings and come up with different challenges and things, and it's just so the advisors are sort of prepared for what may come out. And look, and it's also respecting that they're also not for everyone. If you get a couple of being over in Perth, a couple of engineers who are married who come into a meeting, quite often, I don't want to stereotype, but they don't want to have those conversations. They just want to go straight to the financials. And just respecting that, and that, and you'll park it to the side. You don't want to keep pushing it too hard, and that that's not really them. But in all honesty, in my experience, I reckon 9 out of 10 clients would have a really great discovery, and it really does set the foundation for a great relationship with them going forward. Because it's something we can go back to and explain to them, look, remember what was important to you back 2 years ago, or 12 months ago, that seems like that's changed. And tell us, what value are you placing on that now? What priority do you place on that? And what's the significance of that now to you? We capture some really, really great stuff in that first meeting.
And does that tie into the re-engagement piece? Because you mentioned you got your 12-month agreements, and then obviously the importance of really nailing it with that to get people renewed and have continuity of revenue and relationships as well. Maybe, talk us through that.
It really does, because we feel like we've got a really good scope of work to deliver in that first 12 months, but prioritize what we're going to deliver for them, and we know the value of what that's going to achieve for them. So at the end of the 12 months, we'll be sitting down for the re-engagement. We always say to the client, look, in 12 months' time, the reason we're doing 12 months fees is because we don't understand what challenges you're going to face next year. We don't know what sort of financial complexities you're going to have. And we also don't really know what's going to be most important to you then. We know what's most important to you now. So we're going to focus on what we can deliver to you over the 12 months. So you imagine when we had that next meeting, 12 months down the track, again, they're very open to the conversation because they've already had it before. And look, if nothing has changed much around what's most important to them, well, then that, it goes a lot quicker. But quite often, as we know, things have changed, and they might have new priorities around what's most important. And there's life events that happen. Hey, COVID happened, right? Like there's a war, there's all sorts of things happening. And we've found in this last couple of years that it's reset a lot. I'm sure I'm not the only person or the only advisor to say that. It's reset a lot around what's most important to people, for their families and so on. So we're having re-engagement conversations, currently, where quite a lot has changed from what was important to them previously. And as a result of knowing what's changed, we're realigning the advice on what's now of value to them compared to what was of value to them a year ago or 2 years ago. The re-engagement conversation is just as important as the engagement conversation, and it does align the scope of our services for the next 12 months. And the clients, again, really understand how the fees work. They understand that the scope of services have increased and we can add more value, that the fees are going to increase. They also know it's quite refreshing that if our scope of services have decreased because we can't add as much value, that the fees are going to decrease. And it's got to make sense. If it makes sense to us, it's going to make sense to the clients. And like I said before, it also makes sense to the professional partners who are referring these clients through to us. So it's just a model that, again, for us, it's quite a mature model now, and it works really well for our team.
You mentioned when we were chatting just before that you focus on collecting the right data at the right time in that process to equip you guys to have those conversations, as effectively as possible. What have you found is most important there, particularly around the renewals and what goes into it before you actually have that conversation with your clients?
As in regards to the initial, say, 15-minute chat and so on, or when we actually have
when people are coming up for their 12-month renewal, you were talking about something about like getting the right information back from them about maybe it's their goals or what's going on with their money. Is that?
Yeah. So again, we will have the re-engagement conversation personally with them again, which is making sure has anything changed around what's most important to them. And remember, these are quite deep conversations. We're not just doing surface level goals and so on. We're actually going into quite aspirations, hopes and dreams. We're getting what we call signature outcomes from the clients, which are outcomes that we couldn't just make up. They're not surface driven at all. They've had to come from the clients. Little things, it's just around perhaps the actual name of the little town in Italy that they want to go to and the reasons why they want to go there. And they had one last week where one of the clients wants to go back to Vaso, I think it is, in Italy, to see her 9-year-old grandmother. It was such a strong thing. And of course, she hadn't been able to get back there for 2.5 years. And we talk about tears. That was a real tear moment. She wanted to make sure that they had the financial certainty that she could do this sort of trip and not just do it once. She wants to continue to do it, of course, because she's worried that one day, her grandmother's going to pass away and she wouldn't have seen her. So it's really recapturing that information again and ensuring that we're aligned to what's most important and that it's still, whatever we're doing is still of value to the clients.
Love it. And so you've talked there a bit about a few of the things that haven't changed. What are the things that have changed over the over the time that you've been in business? What have been the biggest shifts for you guys?
I think we're always changing. Like there's been changes to our advice process, which has continued to change, and mainly through technology and so on. I always say to my team, like there's no point just being comfortable, because if we're just comfortable, we're never going to grow. So we have to be comfortable with change and embracing new technology. So there's been a lot of technical change to try and make our process more effective. I guess when we started, I mentioned you before, there was only the two of us, and as we sort of grew in those early days, a lot of the work we were doing was manual, because we didn't really have a manual to go by. We weren't aligned to any institutions. We didn't have any big corporates helping us. So a lot of the stuff we had to figure out for ourselves if we wanted to remain different. What that meant, though, once we started getting a bit of scalability to the business, doing things manual, as you would know, it's not the most effective way, and it doesn't really build efficient solutions. So I think we've been constantly trying to make that process quicker and easier, not just for us, but also for our clients. So there's been a big push around technical change. The other part, as you grow internally, our corporate structure needed to change as well. And we've had to have many changes to that, making sure that it's all aligned and there's proper reporting lines and everyone knows their roles and responsibilities and no one's stepping on each other's toes. Because again, back in the old days, someone might do 2 or 3 or 4 different types of things because everyone chips in and helps. But again, as you grow as a business, you can't be unclear around what people are doing in the office. So it has to be quite clear and documented. And there has to be, the OKRs, objectives and key results to every role. And everyone's got to be performing to those. So the corporate structure has been quite important. And that's been a big change, I guess, for us over the time. The other thing, and I may have mentioned this when we were chatting before, is, I guess the way we're viewed with clients, I think has changed too. Like, I think going back a few years with our brand and so on, wealth's changed, right? I mean, the whole way people view wealth has changed. And that was a big thing that I noticed through COVID. Billionaires wear sneakers. I mean, we all hear that. We know that.
Yeah.
It's true. Like, so I felt like our branding back a few years ago was more that traditional wealth management type branding, which it didn't seem to see relevant in the world we're currently in. So we've, again, tried to make ourselves more approachable, because the way we see clients, we don't just take on ultra high net worths. We have those clients in part of our business, but we want to have an advice model that appeals to all Australians. So we want people just starting their wealth journey, those of more financial complexity, right through to these wealthy families who, again, have significant wealth. So, how do you do that from a branding perspective? I think it's become easier, again, with the shift through COVID. And so I guess the biggest change we've had recently is the rebrand and repositioning ourselves to become more approachable and but still trusted and professional.
The real question is, though, are you wearing sneakers to the office?
Today I've got loafers. How's that?
We're getting closer.
Yeah. Look, on Fridays, we're pretty relaxed in the office, and it's pretty much that the dress code is comfortable. Everyone's got a different interpretation of comfortable.
Totally.
And again, we still see clients on a Friday, and not one person's ever said anything. I think people are really now more than happy with it. We haven't worn ties now for, I think, 4 years. And there was a time when I thought we'd never not wear ties, because that's what you do, right? But can't even imagine that anymore. But we're still professional. So
totally. I think that the COVID bunker lifestyle has really shown that people are humans, because everyone 100%. Was dealing with, you got kids, daycare's closed, school's closed, you couldn't not get some insight into people that you're dealing with. And now it's just, you get a kid that starts screaming on a Zoom that in the background, like that's just normal. Whereas before, like prior to COVID, that would actually be a bit of an issue, or something that you'd start to have a little mini panic about, I think, I
reckon it's been a really good thing. Yeah, I think it's changed, and I think people are really comfortable now with the way we.
And I think it ties in with that, with what you were saying there about, like, really, we know that money is, people are trying to get to, they want more money, but they want it for the why, for the things that it will do, and it's about their life. So I think that the fact that they know that you're a person, that they're a person, like, that's just going to make it easier that you do the dance and help people with that stuff, because it's not just all about spreadsheets and pie graphs, right?
It's 100%. And again, going back to COVID, I honestly think that our engagement conversations are even deeper now post COVID or during COVID. It's people are really up to talking about it now.
Totally. What's on the radar for you, Troy? What are you guys focused on at the moment? What's coming up?
Look, the big thing for us is, again, we never take our eyes off technology. So we're trying to, we've just embraced a whole lot of new tech into the office. So we've got some more to roll out as well. Again, just to try and make the whole advice process more efficient. So that's been great. And I can already see the benefits of doing that. And we just have to keep adapting and changing to what's available. So that's a big part. Like I mentioned, the rebrand has been big, but our focus is on building a great business that delivers, quality, trusted advice. So to do that effectively and to have the national expansion, we've got an office in Sydney. So it's great to have the East Coast and West Coast, but our real goal is to have a boutique office in all capital cities. That's what we want to achieve. And the only way we can do that is by focusing on technology. I guess when we moved to Sydney, that was a bit of a wake-up call. We realised that someone on the East Coast, if they couldn't effectively use our processes because we're on the West Coast, it was going to just slow the whole thing down. So it's really great that was sort of a nice way to start, and we learned a lot from that. So I guess with the technology that we're bringing in now, that's going to overcome that. And it really shouldn't matter where anyone works around Australia. They should be able to tap into the advice process that we've built and be able to deliver, valuable advice to as many Australians as they can.
And how do you tackle your tech decisions when it comes to changing or new things? Because I know that you got 40 plus people in your business.
Yes.
It's a big deal to make those changes. It's not like just flicking a switch. How do you give someone responsibility for that, or does that come with you?
Yeah. No, again, that was probably a painful lesson to learn. We could be here all day if you want to hear the painful lessons. There's quite a few of those. So we didn't have someone in the office who was the tech person. We had a lot of people who knew bits and pieces of it, and everyone sort of played a part. But what we learned was that didn't work. You need to have someone who owns tech, who understands, who can implement it, who can also manage it properly to make sure that it's effective across the whole business and ensuring that it's delivering the solutions that we want. So we now have that person, and that person also has consultants that they deal with and ensure that they also getting the best information at all times. And it's then run across our senior management team and all the different divisions to make sure that it's working in each location in the business. And that's been a game changer since we had that trusted person who's at the top of the game in the tech space. And I always say, look, that person also in the future doesn't even have to come from financial advice. Like it can... I had this when we had a day recently with the team. I said, well, look, if Elon Musk was running our business, what would he do different? And the reason I asked that, because seriously, let's think outside advice and let's look what other businesses are doing.
Yeah.
So what crazy ideas could we think about could be put into advice that could actually work? Because, years ago, some of the things that are happening now, you wouldn't even imagine. So, I'm sort of imagining that person in our business could even be that sort of person who's just completely thinks outside the square from a tech point of view that could deliver really great solutions to our world to make the advice delivery even easier to clients. And it's all about the client experience, right? So if we can continually make the client experience better and better, I think that's got to be what we focus on.
Yeah, I think that as advice evolves further, I see it where you need obviously your technical advice specialists that are intimate with advice and understand, all of the compliance regs and all of those sorts of things. But it's almost like they become a function within the business. And then for the other roles, it's actually becoming less relevant that those roles have necessarily deep backgrounds in that space. I know that when we've looked at our marketing, I actually see it as a huge advantage that they don't have experience in financial services, because it's something that historically we just haven't done that well. And I think when you come with those preconceptions, that sometimes it can blind you to things that make a lot of sense. And we're not really competing with, I'm not competing with you for business. I'm competing with Amazon for business, or
Exactly right.
Facebook and Uber and all of these companies that have such slick user experience, because they've got the psychologists and the consultants and the tech people and the engineers that make it, hook us in and make it seamless. So
it's true. With our we sort of have marketing team as well, again, who haven't come from within advice, and the person who sort of heads up our communications, no background at all in financial advice. But when she first joined the team a couple of years ago, she couldn't even believe the language that we were using in some of the ways of methods that went out to clients and new clients. And what? It was an aha moment where I sort of realized, that probably doesn't sound the sort of language we should be using. And I think a lot of us, particularly if you're coming from the big institutional world, have just got used to talking in a certain way that made sense to us. But if you're a normal Australian or looking for advice, it just didn't seem to be that approachable. So we've made a really conscious effort now with all our communications to make it in a way where people can totally understand what you're saying and be delivered in a way that just makes sense to them.
Absolutely. And I think it's great I think that goes a long way to getting consumers more behind advice, because they understand what's up. And actually, it's not just that they trust you or that they trust me. It's that they trust the process of financial advice, and they understand the outcomes. Troy, really appreciate you sharing your insights there, mate. You guys are up to some great stuff, so keep fighting the good fight. Tell me, my last question for you is, if you could go back, wind back the clock to 2009, and you're just about to put up the shingle, what would be your one piece of advice to yourself back then?
I think the biggest thing I would tell myself then is to not have the business grow quicker than what the back office can keep up with. Because again, that's been the pain points of the business. It really has. It's been great leading a business that's grown over the time, and I'm very proud of that. But along the journey, not just at the beginning, Ben, pretty much along the entire journey and probably until recently, the back office had never been able to keep up with the growth of what was coming for the front office. And as you would know with it, there's just pain points all the way through the advice process and the team internally. So I think what I would slow it down to ensure that those two things are in sync a little bit more. And we've found a solution for growth, back office wise with our processes before that next stage of growth occurred. Obviously look very ambitious at the start, and it was all great to grow the business, but it was really, some tough lessons learned there.
Totally. It's for the team as well. But I think you go too much either way, it's painful.
That's right.
So finding that ideal balance is tricky, but it's good thinking.
But like I said, if we talked about painful lessons, we could have another podcast. I'd take up all of it. There's been a few.
Totally. Well, that can be the next one.
Yeah, mate, thanks so much for having me today. It's been great. It's good to chat.
That's all right. Really appreciate you sharing your insights, mate. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Ben.